Welcome to Dream, Declare, Deliver with Chris Carell and Candace Ogren. Join us each week as we explore how to live a life by design and turn inspiration into realization.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Dream, Declare, Deliver. I'm Chris Carell, and I'm here with Candace Ogren, my co-author for Typhoon Honey, The Only Way Out is Through, which is a great book. By the way, yesterday
We're a
little partial, but it's a great book to give to other people. It's all about dreaming, declaring, delivering, and having a life by design, and that's what we're talking about in this podcast. And so today we're taking kind of a sidestep and looking into one of the things that stops us or gets in the way of a full dream, declare, deliver. And that's yourself and loving yourself. And we both believe that dreaming and declaring are acts of self-love. And there's a universal principle that says that you can only love others as much as you love yourself. You can only have compassion for others as much as you have compassion for yourself. So we want to start there and just look at what are you feeling? Where are there places, are there places in your life where recently you've just really felt under the thumb of the universe and ask yourself, why is this happening to me? Why me? And what do we say that comes from when we do that why me thing?
Well, it's interesting, Chris, that you say this, because I remember, my mom when I was young, when I was a teenager, and I would always say, like, why do I always end up dating jerks? And she was like, because you're a jerk. and my mom loves me, but like the reason she was saying that is like, you're going to keep attracting the type of people that you are creating in your own life. So we're all perfect reflections of one another. And so if you look around at, this is something I've read in so many self-help books, but if you look around at the 5 people you're closest to, do you admire them or do you not admire them? And if you don't admire them, then that's actually a reflection of how you feel about yourself. Right. And if you do admire them, then that's a reflection of how you feel about yourself. And so, love and success it's an inside job.
Absolutely.
It starts with how we're viewing ourselves. And you said something, Chris, too, just a moment ago. You said, our ability to love or have compassion towards others is dependent on our ability to love or have compassion towards ourselves. I would actually say that our ability to receive love from others is also dependent on our ability to love ourselves.
Yeah, it's a two-way street. We will. If we don't love ourselves, we'll cut the other person down, even our lover, our partner, we'll cut them down to the level that we're able to receive, and if I don't love me and if I don't have deep respect and compassion for my humanness, I'm not perfect. I screw up. I give a good try, but sometimes it doesn't go my way. And sometimes I just really, get angry at that part of me that wasn't successful, that wasn't, the champion or whatever. And, and that will then make it so that Sarah can't love me to the level that she loves me. I'll stop her because she does it to me too, is like, no, I don't need that. I can't do that right now because I don't see that in me. And, we're in a place where we can talk about it. She and I and you and Andrew, and we practice these tools in our lives. But, for many, many, many people, we first have to come to the realization of what's happening there.
Yeah. And you might not know. What Andrew and I have learned is that he often doesn't know, or I often don't know when I'm like in self-loathing. So, or when I'm beating myself up. But the best way to find out if you're beating yourself up is to look around at your interactions with other people. Mm-hmm. I was telling you, Chris, before the show today that I just planned a vacation. I planned a vacation for my family. Mm. And I looked around at like the cheapest flights I could find. And it just so happened that the cheapest flights last week were in Aruba. So cool. We're going to Aruba for vacation, for spring break for my son. And it's the first vacation, true vacation that we've taken as a family in a long time,
Yeah.
and together in a long time. And I planned this, I bought the plane tickets and I told my husband, and Andrew was just like, well, okay. And I was just like, what kind of answer is that? And I got really frustrated. And I said, wait, can we start this conversation over again? Like, I just did this thing and it was very exciting. He was like, well, you didn't ever ask me what I wanted. And we got into an argument about it. And I said, I ask you all the time what you want. What I found out a week later, because he didn't know at the time, what I found out a week later was that he was down on himself because of how he's feeling financially right now. He's starting a really big new job in a couple of weeks, but for right now, like he's in a different position financially, and he didn't feel like he could contribute to this trip. And because of that, he was snarky about the whole thing. And so it was his inability to like receive, like, oh, I'm not worthy of receiving this vacation. So I'm going to basically sabotage it. And I think that happens a lot. Have you seen that, Chris?
Oh, yeah. I think, a lot of times, in the work that I do with people, there's a chance to receive something or do something, and they poo-poo it. They go like, nah, I don't need that. Don't do that to me, or whatever. Or they downright get, snarky or angry, and push it away. And when you dig past that, when you start, asking the questions of like, so where have you felt like that before? And tell me about that time. And, the person starts revealing, well, actually that came from, I just was in a really bad place. And so then we can inspect what's going on now and do the same thing. And invariably it comes down to that principle of, I can't receive it. We're talking about it like a corporate award, and the person just stiff arms it and pushes it away. In a kind of a false humility, like, no, I don't deserve it. Don't do that to me, and it's really because they're feeling down on themselves, because they didn't make a number last month, or because, they had asked the boss 3 times in a row for the raise, and he hadn't come through, or she hadn't come through. And, so now they're coming through, and you go like, oh yeah, well, fine. Yeah. And when we find ourselves doing those things, that's a really good red flag to stop and say, wait, what's going on here? Do I deserve, not like in an entitlement, but as a human being, my birthright is to be loved and to be embraced and to enjoy life to its fullest. That's a birthright. It comes with being born, and when we're not feeling worthy of that, when I'm not feeling worthy of that, I know that I just brush it off, and what an insult that is to the other person.
And not even brush it off. Like I will go the opposite direction. I will become a whiny baby. Or I will, or I'll become mean. And it's all because I'm mad at myself. This just happened this morning. So you just triggered something for me. So I'm hiring someone at work, and my boss and I had a conversation, the CEO of my company and I had the conversation yesterday, and he thinks I should be hiring a different role than what I'm hiring for. And so we agreed that we would hire for the role he wants me to hire for 4 weeks. And if that's not successful, then we'll hire for the role I want. And so he sent a message to HR saying, we're doing this. But he basically said, we're not hiring for the role Candace is. And I was like, I'm actually not aligned with that. Like, I'm okay with waiting 4 weeks, but I still want to keep it. Anyway, so I got really frustrated this morning. I woke up, was brushing my teeth, and looked down at this message from my CEO. And I was like, he just completely undermined me. And I was feeling really sorry for myself. And I was like, I'm going to quit this job. And, I had this whole, negative headspace. I talk about the dangerous neighborhood in our head.
Right.
And as you're talking, I'm like, well, if I truly was practicing self-love, then I'd say, okay, well, I deserve to be fully heard. And so does he. Clearly in the conversation yesterday, he thought that I agreed that this thing was happening. He sent the message to HR. And then I undermined him by saying, I'm not aligned with this in front of HR. So I'm actually the one who created this devolution in this conversation, not him. Right. And so it takes an act of like, wait a minute. If I love myself to recognize, like, I don't want to be undermined, then I can also recognize when I've just done that to somebody else. So I undermine my boss.
Yeah. And I want to just for a second look the other direction of when I love myself, when I'm compassionate with myself, when I give myself full birth to be human and enjoy the funny parts of screwing up and things like that. All kinds of things are attracted to that, so we often talk about the law of attraction and how what you put out is what you will get back, the same with your circle of 5 friends or something like that. But when we have that self-love, when we start from that place there, it allows, it lets in all the love of the universe, all the love of other people, and it gives us then the space to be compassionate with them. Like you were with your boss, like, yeah, he deserves to be heard too. And when that opens up a whole different level of discussion. So let's go back to declaring, because, we're worth declaring. If I start from a place of, I'm just a squirt, I'm just a worm, I'm, not worthy, blah, blah, blah. What's going to be our declaration? Just enough to get by.
Well, so yesterday was Valentine's Day, and Andrew and I decided we were going to watch a rom-com in the backyard. Now it was 35 degrees outside, and I could see my breath the entire time. And I was like, "This is amazing that I've sat out here for 2 hours." But anyway, fast forward, we were watching Your Place or Mine, which is one of Ashton Kutcher's recent rom-coms, and he says, in the very beginning to the woman, don't call me, or I can't call you because I'm an unknowable piece of ... And then the entire movie is about him essentially collecting evidence that he's an unknowable piece of crap. And so the first thing is changing. So we call it flipping the script. And so it starts, know your words, know your world, change your words, change your world. If you notice yourself in a consistent pattern of communication about yourself, like, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not whatever enough. The first thing is just to practice daily saying the opposite.
I am.
Yes, I am enough. And that it sounds silly, but when you get into the practice of it, you begin to believe it. That's how you got into the practice of the negative self-talk in the first place.
Right, exactly.
And you begin to collect evidence to support it.
Right. And we talked before about doing gratitude lists in the morning and in the evening, just being grateful for what you do have. But we often think of gratitude lists as stuff or conditions outside of us. Doing a gratitude list on yourself. I'm so grateful that I have the ability to write words and be expressive. I'm so grateful that I'm tall or this, write a gratitude list about ourselves. And still, there's some part of the ego that wants to go read the hand, and so we have a couple of exercises that we often use that help you get past that, stiff arm, pushback and get to the place of being, grateful about who you are and what you are and that you are worthy.
And so the first one doesn't require you to do anything except for look in the mirror. So Chris and I do this a lot. I actually put this in one of my trainings, but, look in the mirror. You could pull up a Zoom. We're on Zoom right now. Pull up a Zoom and look at yourself wherever you can see yourself. And spend at least 5 minutes staring at yourself, like clock yourself, because it is often uncomfortable the first time you do this. And Chris, what is the first things typically that people see?
Oh, they see, I don't like the bags under my eyes, or, the first thing they'll see is everything that's wrong. And so, I'll try to avert my eyes and look at my chin, or, like I'm old, so I have this little, thing,
You're doing it.
Exactly. I'm an example. So that's what we do.
And you'll often notice it too if you try to adjust. So if you're looking in the mirror and you're like touching your hair or touching your chin, that's something like that is an adjustment that you're making because it's something that you're unhappy with. So the first thing to do in this 5 minutes is to notice it and then to give yourself an opportunity to fall in love with that face or that body. We'll talk about the body in a minute, but that face, just start there. What do you love about your face? What does that face represent? How many lifetimes has that face lived? Those wrinkles, what do they represent? What is the life that those wrinkles have lived? What's the story they could tell?
Yeah.
Like what do you love about your chin or your neck? Because what does that represent the life you've lived? And so allowing yourself to just go into oh wow, I have this freckle on my forehead. Because this is a constellation for me, and
it's my North Star.
It's bugged me so much for the longest time, but now I'm like, yeah, it's my North Star, and it's something that reminds me what's important. So, what about you, Chris? Anything that shifted for you?
So once I do that, then the second level of that is to, all those things that, pardon me, all those things that I was going to critique before, I get to love them, and love them up a little bit. Excuse me. I have something caught in my throat.
And what I'd say too is it's one thing to do this with your face. And so we start there, but if you really want to get wild.
Yeah, we call it the varsity level.
The varsity level is to stand naked in front of the mirror and do this assessment of your whole body and like with love, and identify the wrinkles, the rolls, all of it.
Find the little muffin top,
find something you love about that, and what that means, right. and what you're grateful for about that piece of your body.
Sarah always talks to me about dyeing my hair. She said, "You look so much younger if you dyed your hair." I said, "But I earned every one of these white hairs, They're messages to me that I've aged and I have wisdom and things like that. And so I get to, be in love with my gray hair. And the same thing's true with when we do the whole body exercise, to look at the parts that that I used to be embarrassed about, or that, maybe I still am embarrassed about, and actually point to them for yourself. Point to your butt, or point to your, chest size, or, whatever, if you feel like you don't have the thing that you, fantasize about. And first chuckle, and say,
like I just
did. Chuckle about it, and then embrace it. And, say like, that's mine. I do have a butt. I do have this. I do have gray hair, and that's okay. It's just perfect. It's absolutely perfect.
And in fact, like I even go a step further and to say like why you live it. So as a woman, I'm self-conscious usually about my stomach. And, but then if I look in the mirror and I say, you've delivered 2 children, and like, this is not just a stomach, like this has brought life into the world. Then
that's
like
sweet.
Now it's something that I want to share with other people. I want other people to see my belly. So now let's talk about this is a self-work, a self-practice.
Right.
The one thing I would invite you to do next as an exercise is to invite someone else in. And this can be anyone. This can be a neighbor, a friend, a partner. And this is something that we do often too. And this is eye gazing, and actually sitting down. Sitting down face to face with another person, and let's say now for 10 minutes, eye gazing with another person. And Chris, why is eye gazing an act of declaring self-love?
Well, the philosophers say that the eyes are the window to the soul, that you're actually letting somebody in to your soul, into the depths of who you are, by making that eye contact and loving contact. And I do a lot of men's work, and one of the exercises we do is the eye gazing line, where, we have a drum beat, and every heartbeat, boom, boom, you move to another person, and you spend 30 seconds to a minute. And men just, like they'll look anywhere else, or they'll get nervous chuckles and things like that, because it's so uncomfortable letting somebody else look into your eyes, and so uncomfortable looking deeply into another person's eyes. And then we change the rule. We say, you get to express love to that man by looking directly in the eyes. So how would you express, I love you? You're worthy. I care about you. And when you start doing it for another person, and allowing that other person to do it back to you, because there's some place in there that becomes reciprocal, where, whatever is inside of my, box up here suddenly realizes that it does take two to do that, and I can only that other person can only let me in as much as I let them in. It's a really deeply powerful exercise. Eye gazing is just, I've literally seen grown men cry doing this exercise, and it's so revealing, and opening of the heart. It's a great exercise to do, and especially with your partner, of course.
And you're not able. I have not been, in moments of my life, have not been able to do eye gazing because I'm not in a place where I feel like I'm hiding something, or I'm not living my truth, whatever that means. And eye gazing is really hard. And so that's why we think that this is an exercise of declaring self-love, is saying, I am worthy of someone looking deep into my soul, and seeing love. And that takes me, Chris mentioned the gratitudes, and writing a gratitude list is one thing of what makes you grateful, for yourself. But Andrew and I start our day every day with, what are we grateful for? And it's in each other. And like being able to share what you're grateful for, particularly when you're in an argument, like this is, Andrew and I often will be in an argument, and I'll be like, I'm grateful for, through my team. But the reason we do it is to remind ourselves that, like, this too shall pass, whatever this is that we're in right now. And if I can give gratitude to you, it means that I'm able to receive it.
Yeah. So we were going through, some rough stuff as a community of friends, for the last bit of time now. It seems a while. And I called up our mutual friend, Peter, to start working on something. And, I'm a get it done kind of person. So I immediately want to start the conversation. And Peter says, no. What do you want to be acknowledged for? Before we start, you know exactly where I'm going, but that's who Peter is. It's like, and he didn't say first he acknowledged me. He said, what do you want to be acknowledged for? And it just stopped me in my tracks. And so I got a chance to ask for what I'm worthy of. He delivered that. And then I returned the favor and said, so what do you want to be acknowledged for? And it just put both of us in a place of compassion where we needed to be, instead of a place of, put my head down and bulldoze through.
I have to say, so Peter got that from my husband. And directly. So Andrew does that to me often. And then when Peter was a student of ours, and now he's a friend. Mm-hmm. And when Peter was a student, I told the story about how when I'm like really angry, my husband will say, what would you like to be acknowledged for? Because he knows I want to be acknowledged for something. Mm. And then I'll say, well, this is what I want to be acknowledged for. And I'm pouty. And then my husband acknowledges me. And then I cry because I finally have received what I was actually wanting. And it feels so fabulous. So Peter heard that story. And now for the last 3 years, every conversation he's had, he asks what people want to be acknowledged for. So Peter has taken it to a whole nother level, and I acknowledge him for that. Yeah,
absolutely. But that's the power of it is, when we're wanting in want, like as in we don't have what we want, And by the way, just a side paragraph is, I often play with words. And if you look want up in the dictionary, the first definition is something that you desire. The second definition is to lack, for want of something. And so when we say, I want this, it's often we're manifesting the lacking of it anyway. So, by asking what would you like to be acknowledged for, you get to say that and get that out of the way so that you're actually filling that bucket up a little bit and getting the kind of love that you deserve, that you really wanted anyway.
But I invite you, if you're listening today, to actually ask yourself that question. Like, what would you like to be acknowledged for? Because oftentimes when we're really frustrated, whether it's with my boss or with my 3-year-old this morning when he wouldn't put his underwear on or whatever it is, it's what do I want to be acknowledged for in this moment? And then ask for it. So one of the things I think that we do that is so unhealthy is that we expect other people to be mind readers. We expect other people to give us everything that our heart desires without actually telling them what that is. And so thank goodness for Peter inviting us to ask for what we want, because that's really what we should be doing in the first place. If you're feeling like, oh, wow, I really need to be acknowledged for my generosity on planning this vacation, then go in and ask for it. Andrew, I'd like to be acknowledged for my generosity in planning this vacation, and it invites a different conversation.
Right.
And so the final thing that Chris and I wanted to talk about was just the letter of self-compassion, the letter of forgiveness, the letter of love to yourself. And why would you do that?
Well, I think, again, if it goes back to that principle that, until we have compassion for ourselves, we, aren't going to receive what's, out there for us that is abundantly around us all the time. But B, we're not able to do that for other people. So this is a practice that has two sides to it, when you do it. The practice of self-compassion and writing a letter of self-compassion allows us to be gentle with ourselves. And in doing that, then we get to be gentle with other people. Allows us to be compassionate with ourselves, and then we get to be compassionate for other people. And compassion doesn't mean that we excuse violations of their word or my word or things like that. It means that we understand that, we all do this. We're all in this human boat together. So you start a letter of compassion by finding something fairly recent. It works best if you do a recent thing that you got annoyed at, or that you failed to do, or that and this is an exercise in truth telling. Some event that happened, you write it out as this is what happened, and this is what I'm annoyed that I didn't follow through on what I said I was going to do. I often do that for myself. I'll keep my word for other people, but I often don't keep my word for myself. And when I do that, it just nicks away at my self-esteem and my self-love. So I'll write out that whole thing, part one. Part two then is to assume the role of your dearest friend, who is so compassionate for you, and write a letter to yourself from that friend, as if that friend is saying, that must have been really tough to deal with. And I'm so sad that you had to go through that. But I'm okay. I'm sitting here with you. I'm not going to go away. I still love you anyway. And, and go through the whole description of that event with tenderness, as if you would take care of your other person. As if you would take care of your best friend or your lover or your husband, wife, whatever, your life partner. How would you treat them? You get to be treated that way too. My wife always, just another side, my wife always talks about how the one thing that she was most remarkable or taken by that I did when we were raising our son was, one day he just got into this whole self-loathing, beat up preteen kind of thing. And I slammed my hands on the table and he said, "Don't you talk about my son like that." And it just messed his mind up. And he's, because, you don't want to talk about like the other person, like that. You wouldn't talk that way about yourself, So that self-compassion, acceptance is the way you would talk to a dear friend and really care for them as they were going through this rough event.
And I was telling Chris that this is actually how I met Andrew. And so Andrew and I were in a workshop, and we were asked to write a letter of self-compassion. And we're writing this letter, and everyone's crying, as they're writing their letters to themselves, and they're having this moment with themselves. And then we were invited to turn to the person sitting next to us and read the letter to them as if they were us, and we were reading this to them. And Andrew and I read our letters to each other, and that's how we met. And so I'd invite you to take these exercises seriously, because it wasn't until I actually forgave myself for some really important things and then shared that and bared my soul in that way to a total stranger that I was able to meet my soulmate. And so this is pretty big stuff. This is deep stuff, everyone.
So that's your assignment, is to write that letter of self-compassion, to practice gratitude for all of the foibles as well as all the good stuff about you. Not the resume stuff. I call it the shadow resume, all the stuff that you would like to hide from light. Write a gratitude list about that, write that letter of self-compassion, and, know that in order to dream, declare, and deliver, you get to be worthy of all those dreams. So until next time, we commend you to your practices. Keep on doing it. Practice self-love, and we'll see you on the next episode. Take care.
Yeah.